Welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something important, a key health marker you asked us to look at, HbA1c. Okay, so let's unpack this. You've given us some really fascinating sources here, and they all seem to point to just how critical HbA1c is, not just, for managing diabetes, but really for long-term health, keeping your organs safe, staying independent. So our mission today is to pull out the most crucial bits, help you really understand this master indicator, as the sources call it, and what it means. And these sources, they offer a very practical sort of clinical view, which is great.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating about HbA1c, I think, is the unique view it gives us. It's basically an average over about 3 max, measuring how much sugar, glucose, is actually stuck onto the hemoglobin in your red blood cells. So unlike those daily finger prick tests, which, as you know, jump around depending on what you ate or stress or sleep.
Right, those can change so fast.
Yeah, HbA1c gives you the long view, the bigger picture of your metabolism. It's less like a photo and more like maybe a time-lapse video of how your body's been handling sugar over the last quarter. Just for reference, generally under 5.7% is considered normal. Then 5.7% to 6.4% is pre-diabetes territory, and 6.5% or higher usually indicates diabetes. But the key is this number shows how your whole system is working hormonally, neurologically, everything.
That video idea really lands. It makes you think about how all those little daily things add up, doesn't it? It's kind of sobering, that long-term tracking. And this is where it gets really interesting for me. Many people, myself included probably, think HbA1c equals blood sugar, full stop. But your sources, they're very clear its influence ripples out everywhere, far beyond just glucose levels. So what's the bigger story? What does it really mean for our overall health?
That's the crucial point, absolutely. A high HbA1c consistently. It's not just about sugar floating around. It's a sign of poor insulin sensitivity, which means your pancreas is under strain, right? It has to pump out more and more insulin.
Unworking it.
Exactly, until it gets exhausted and resistance gets worse. It's a vicious cycle. And then there's the link your sources point out to cortisol. That's your main stress hormone.
Right.
If you're chronically stressed, cortisol stays high, and that tells your body to dump more glucose into the blood.
So stress directly impacts the number.
Directly. Worsens HbA1c and can lead to things like ongoing anxiety, trouble sleeping, even that stubborn belly fat people struggle with. And something really illuminating from the sources, too much glucose actually triggers your immune system in an abnormal way.
Yeah.
It releases these inflammatory things, cytokines like IL-6, TNF-alpha, basically signals that shout inflammation throughout the body.
So it causes system-wide inflammation.
Yes, which stresses organs, causes that deep chronic fatigue, sometimes pain, and it literally ages your cells faster. Plus, high sugar makes arteries stiff, messes with blood pressure regulation, leading directly to higher blood pressure, maybe arrhythmias, and definitely a higher cardiovascular risk. And the brain. Sugar is actually toxic to nerve cells.
Yeah.
It messes with crucial neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine.
The feel-good chemicals.
The very same, leading to brain fog, depression risk, Alzheimer's risk goes up, memory problems. So ultimately, if your HbA1c is chronically high, or even if it's suppressed too low, it throws off the balance between pretty much all your major systems. Endocrine, nervous, circulatory, kidneys, liver, muscles. They're all interconnected.
Wow. It's just incredible how one number can be a window into so many different health issues. It really is like a barometer for the whole system, reflecting this complex web. Your sources then seem to drill down into exactly where this hits hardest, organ by organ. Maybe some ways we wouldn't immediately connect. What are some of the key areas that really stand out?
Yeah, they lay it out quite clearly. The hope, for instance, is right at the top. A 10 out of 10 risk level, according to these sources. High sugar damage makes arteries stiff, like we said, and bumps up LDL cholesterol. That combo, it's a major risk for silent heart attacks.
Silent ones, meaning you might not even know.
Precisely. It can lead quietly to atherosclerosis, which is plaque buildup, heart failure, silent MIs, often way before obvious symptoms show up. Symptoms might just be subtle things like ongoing chest discomfort or feeling unusually tired. And interestingly, the sources suggest practical things like a brisk 30-minute walk twice a day if possible. And even specific music. They mentioned Karahar Priya Raga or the song Lag Jaw Gale as potentially helpful for heart rhythm.
Okay, that's fascinating. Music having a physiological impact. How does that work according to the sources?
Well, it sounds surprising, right? But the research mentioned suggests certain traditional musical structures, these ragas, can actually stimulate the vagal nerve. That's a key part of your rest and digest system.
The calming system.
Exactly. And stimulating it can demonstrably lower your pulse rate, reduce stress hormones, which indirectly helps your metabolism and heart health.
Yeah.
So beyond the heart, the kidneys are another really high-risk area, like 9.5 out of 10. All that excess sugar directly damages the tiny filters in your kidneys, the nephrons, leading to things like diabetic nephropathy, chronic kidney disease. Common symptoms might be swelling in your feet or having to urinate more often. Then the brain, also very high risk, 9 out of 10. Chronic high sugar really messes with thinking, with cognition.
Yeah.
But paradoxically, if your sugar drops too low, too fast, that can cause confusion too.
So both ends are bad for the brain.
Definitely. It contributes to early dementia risk, that persistent brain fog we talked about, depression, memory loss. You might notice it as irritability or just not remembering things as well. For brain health, the sources suggest things like meditation and listening to specific classical ragas again, like Riti Golai or Ebiri. The eyes are right up there too, 9 out of 10 risk. High sugar actually thickens the tiny blood vessels in the retina.
In the back of the eye.
Yes, which can lead to bleeding, vision loss, conditions like retinopathy or cataracts developing earlier. Blurred vision is often an early sign. A really practical tip here from the sources. Try to cut out digital screens maybe 2 hours before bed and think about blue light blocking glasses and of course blood vessels generally and blood pressure. Also 9 out of 10 risk. Sugar makes those vessel walls thick and less flexible. Blood pressure goes up, clot risk increases.
Leading to serious stuff like strokes.
Hypertension, stroke, thrombosis, exactly. The advice, keep salt under 5 grams a day. Simple but effective. Then your legs, specifically the nerves and circulation down there, about an 8.5 out of 10 risk. Persistent high sugar damages those peripheral nerves and small blood vessels, causes neuropathy.
That numbness and tingling feeling.
That's it. Which can, in severe cases, progress to things like gangrene or peripheral artery disease. Lifestyle tips include foot massage, wearing cotton socks, breathable ones. And importantly, if you have these issues, don't walk barefoot. Too risky for injury.
Good practical point.
And finally, the pancreas itself. 8 out of 10 risk. It's constantly being pushed to make insulin, and eventually it just gets worn out. That's the direct path to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. A neat dietary tip here. Eat fruit with some nuts. The fat and fiber helps slow that sugar absorption.
Smart combo.
And it doesn't stop there. The sources also touch on the liver, fatty liver disease, cirrhosis risk, muscles weakness, fatigue, sarcopenia. Even lungs can cause breathlessness, make you more vulnerable to infections. It's truly systemic.
Wow, it's a really comprehensive and honestly quite sobering map of the damage. Pervasive is the word. It can feel a bit overwhelming hearing all that. But the flip side is these sources are packed with practical science-backed things we can actually do, things to manage HbA1c and protect those organs. Or some of the key lifestyle takeaways you pulled out.
Absolutely, there's a lot of empowering advice. Movement is fundamental. A brisk walk, 30 to 45 minutes a day, preferably twice if you can manage it. This isn't just vague advice. Major bodies like the American Diabetes Association, the WHO, they back this strongly. It improves insulin sensitivity, lowers fasting sugar, brings down HbA1c.
Okay, so consistency is key there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Then diet. Critically important. Avoid the obvious high glycemic stuff. Sugary drinks, white rice, white bread, things made with maida or refined flour, they just spike your glucose incredibly fast. Instead, focus on things like millet, lentils, lows, legumes. They have a lower glycemic index, lots of fiber, so the sugar release is much slower, much gentler.
More stable energy.
Exactly. Also, be mindful of very sweet fruits, mangoes, bananas, grapes, especially if your HbA1c is already high. Maybe limit those for a bit. And here's one I found really interesting. Mindful eating. Actually paying attention to your food, not eating while working or watching TV.
No multitasking at meals.
Right. It seems simple, but it improves digestion, lowers cortisol, maybe the stress connection, and helps glucose control. And meal timing. Try to finish eating by 7:30 p.m. Then give your body a good 12 to 14 hour overnight fast. This syncs with your natural circadian rhythms and really helps lower fasting insulin levels.
That mindful eating point, connecting it directly to cortisol, that's a fantastic insight. It goes beyond just calories in, calories out. And speaking of stress, the sources seem to really double down on the mind-body connection for HbA1c control. What practices stood out there?
Yes, this is where it becomes very holistic. Calming music, for one. Specifically, those traditional structures like Carnatic Ragas, Abhiri, Riti Golai, Karaharpriya were mentioned. There's evidence cited in your sources from places like NIH and Harvard that these can stimulate the vagal nerve.
That rest and digest nerve again.
Exactly, which helps lower pulse rate, blood pressure, stress hormones. Music therapy notes actually list specific ragas for stress and cortisol and others for heart rhythm. They suggest listening for maybe 20, 30 minutes after lunch or before bed.
Really specific.
Yeah. Another powerful tool is slow breathing. Just consciously slowing your breath down to maybe 6 to 8 breaths per minute. Or practicing pranayama daily. This directly activates your calming nervous system, improves heart rate variability, or HRV.
Which is a measure of stress resilience. Right?
Precisely. And it reduces oxidative stress throughout the body. Even something as simple as walking barefoot on grass morning or evening, sometimes called grounding. The idea is it reduces inflammation, helps balance your autonomic nervous system, improves cardiovascular resilience, lowers cortisol.
Nature's remedy.
Seems like it. And finally, screen time. Cutting back, especially in the 2 hours before bed. This helps prevent the suppression of melatonin, your sleep hormone. Better sleep means better insulin regulation overnight, which helps stabilize your fasting sugar.
It's fascinating. So much focus is naturally on the dangers of high HbA1c, but you mentioned, and the sources highlight, that too low is also a problem. What's the common blind spot there? Is lower always better?
That's a really important clarification, and yes, it's a common misconception. Lower is not always better. While we talk a lot about the risks of high levels, your sources are clear. An HbA1c dipping below 4.0%, maybe even below 4.5%, brings its own dangers. Primarily the risk of hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. That can cause shaking, fainting, serious mental confusion.
Which could be really dangerous for some people.
Especially for the elderly or people with existing heart conditions, yes. And on the flip side, as we've covered, keeping it too high, say, consistently above 7%, that brings all those well-documented risks. Microvascular damage, organ failure risk, kidneys, heart, brain, eyes, chronic inflammation, poor immunity, wounds that just won't heal. So it's genuinely about finding that sweet spot, that balance, not just pushing the number down at all costs. And I think if we tie all this together, connect to the bigger picture, the core message coming through from your sources isn't really about chasing numbers on a lab report. It's about living in a way that supports your whole internal system, your internal body orchestra, as one source put it.
I like that metaphor.
Yeah. Managing your sugar, managing your HbA1c. It's about aligning your lifestyle, your movement, your food, your stress management, your sleep with your fundamental biology. And that sweet spot, that balance point where everything works in harmony. Hormones, heart, brain, gut. The sources suggest aiming for an HbA1c between about 5.3% and 5.7%.
That's such a powerful way to frame it. Not chasing a number, but tuning your whole system. So the actionable wisdom is clear. Stay active, eat mindfully, manage stress, maybe through music, maybe through grounding, finding connection, love. It really brings it all together. So maybe the question for you listening is, what part of your internal orchestra are you going to focus on tuning today based on these insights? Thank you so much for bringing these sources to us and for joining us on this deep dive today.